I can turn it up if you need me.
No, it's. I think everybody can hear me. So we're gonna. Their lantern over there is a guy by the name of that's George Hidey, and if you look on his stone, it says, yeah, George is right behind you up there. It says gas battalion. Well, he was in World War One, and World War One was the first modern war, and essentially what happened in World War One was technology had outpaced tactics. So you had 75-year-old generals who didn't even know what a machine gun was dictating tactics for 18-year-olds. And so what happened in World War One is Germany, as they went through Belgium and into France, they got kind of bogged down at the very last minute before they got to Paris, and they settled into what everybody knows as trench warfare. So with trench warfare, essentially, it was a stalemate. So in order to get things moving, or an attempt to get things moving, Germany, at the First Battle of Ypres, released chlorine gas. Now, the 1908 Hague Convention said it wasn't legal to use in war. Germany was a signatory of that, but they used it anyhow. And the thing with chlorine is it's heavier than air and it's green. So the eyewitness accounts will tell you there's this green fog slowly rolling towards, in this case, it was French and Algerian troops, and they had no idea what it was. They were just kind of watching it. And by the time the chlorine hits them and they start to suffocate, then they get mass panic. 1,000 men died in like a half hour from that gas, and it opened up this gigantic hole in the line. And the Germans did not exploit the hole because they weren't prepared for it to work that good. Well, chlorine gas is neutralized by water. And so as it was used before gas masks started coming online, which was really quickly, men would actually urinate in their hankies and breathe through their urine because the chlorine gas would be neutralized by the urine, the water in the urine. And essentially what Germany did was they started an escalating gas war. So gas masks were able to come online very quickly. They were very effective, so they developed more potent gases. They developed a gas called phosphine, I forget the name, phosphine. And phosphine had a very distinct odor, but it was toxic at 4 times lower than you could smell. The other thing with phosphine was low doses, you might not show symptoms for an hour or more, so you didn't always know you were gassed. Well, what phosphine does is it breaks down the barrier between the wall of the lung and the blood, and so you drown from inside out. And so they developed gas mask for phosphine, and they used phosphine at the Second Battle of Ypres, which was the following year in 1915. Well, gases became ineffective because they would just keep their gas masks on. Then they developed gases that could go through the gas masks that were not fatal, but they were so irritating and you panicked, you would tear your gas mask off, and then the phosphine would kill you. So 2% of all fatalities in World War I were from gas, which is not that many, but it was the psychological effect. These phosphine patients would take months and months and months. They had a very high incidence of skin cancer after the war, very high incidence of lung cancer after the war. But it was used as a psychological war. But basically, it was a psychological weapon to keep you scared all the time. And that's essentially, when you read the histories and you read these first-person accounts, that's what these guys all say. You know, you were never able to relax. You always had to be ready because you never knew when the gas was coming. And, you know, especially when it's a gas you can't smell. So the United States developed what they called gas regiments. And these gas regiments were with different battalions. And this George Hidey was in a gas regiment. And so what a gas regiment would do is often a gas canisters were color coded with different crosses. And 90% of the gas used was actually tear gas. And the issue with gas, of course, is if the wind shifts, you got a problem. And one of the very first times Britain used gas, that's exactly what happened. The wind shifted, came right back on them, and they really hurt themselves. So gas was not an effective weapon, but it was an effective psychological operation because these guys it just kept them on edge all the time. So Mr. Hidey here, he was in a gas battalion, and these guys were specially trained, and what they would do is mostly what U.S. gas battalions did was they would go through the line at night and set up a line of tear gas. And then in the morning, the tear gas would go off, and the wind would blow the tear gas towards the enemy, and then they would climb up out of the trenches and charge. And so that's primarily what they did. The United States, out in Arizona, has the largest storage facility for these war gases in the world. And I know that because I was bird watching in Arizona. And I had my scope out looking at these birds. And next thing I know, I was surrounded by 5 people and told to put my hands up. Or Colorado, that's right. I said Arizona, didn't I? I was in Colorado. I'm like, well, actually, I just got in my car. They surrounded me and said, put your hands where we can see them. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I got my hands out the window. My brother Abe's got his hands out the window, and he's like nervous, right? He's like whatever. So anyhow, Abe was all worked up. He's like, what are you doing? I said, we're watching birds. He said, well, do you see those over there? And guys, I'm telling you, we're talking a mile and a half away. There's these little bubbles. You can just barely see them. I said, yeah? He said, that's the largest nerve gas facility storage in the world. I said, well, I'm still watching birds. He said, well, do you mind if I search your car? I said, no, sir, not at all. So he said, do you see that guy sitting on the hill? And there was a guy on the hill with a high-powered rifle on us. We didn't notice because we were watching birds. I mean, the birds are right here, right? And this is like way out there. So they searched our car, they searched us, took our ID, wanted to know why we were driving a car with Florida plates. I said, because that's what they gave us at the airport. This was when my nephew was getting married. What year was that, Patrick? What year did Zach get married? What? 2014. That was 2014. So, at any rate, we have not yet destroyed all of our gas things. So, he said, okay. And so at the very end, he said, I want to thank you guys for being so polite. I said, well, do we have an option? And he says, buddy, you have no idea. I said, well, I'm glad we were able to be polite. He said, so what are you bird watchers doing from here? So I said, well, we're going up here. We're going to take a left. I said, there's this bird called a mountain plover. And I said, we're seen on this road. He said, that's even a worse spot. So he radios ahead. He said, you got a couple bird watchers going to be coming down, blah, 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 blah. And and then he gave us his card and said, if you're back tomorrow, give me a call and tell me where you're going to be so you stay out of trouble. And so he was very nice about it. But anyhow, So we still have this gas. Now, of all the ironies here, the guy that ran the German gas program, he was a German Jew that converted to Presbyterian, basically so he could get him more easily employed. He developed Zyklon B, which is your Zyklon A and B. Zyklon A and B are cyanide insecticides that are very effective for insects. He actually won the Nobel Prize in 1919 for chemistry because he developed a way to make fertilizer that we still use today. He is, without some of this guy's work, we would not have the production we have today. And then in 1933, he was persecuted when the Nazis came to power, and they ended up using his invention to gas 7 million Jews. So, irony of irony. You develop something that saves the world by increasing production, and you develop something that kills 7 million people. That's just the way history is sometimes. So that is George Hidey. Not the vast majority, but most officers in those units were pharmacists or chemists. He was neither. He was a railroad man. He lived in Bowerston. So that's George Hidey, and that's the gas. So our final story is, if you were at the Jewett, this is a repeat for you. It's Mike Torchik. So when Mike was 15, he witnessed a murder. And so Skit, which is just down below the hill, Skit was a community, a very poor community. You can see the original houses are very small. There's still a few of them down there. There was quite a few houses down there at the time, and one of the people that lived there was, God, I forgot his name. Where'd my thing go? Cletus, I know Cletus. There's Cletus Palmer. I think we're up to Cletus Palmer the fourth, right? CP4. Yeah, I think we're on CP4. I'm not sure which Cletus Palmer this was. But Cletus Palmer was 15. He was a black man. He was in Jewett, and his neighbor, Gifford, his neighbor was heavily pregnant. She was 31 years old, and he offered her a ride. So she got on the scooter in Jewett, and they were riding his scooter out, and they were taking that low road to Skit. And as they were coming down 151, her father was coming the other direction. He became enraged that she was riding on a scooter with a black man and tried to run him off the road. So Cletus dropped her. They went to the Gifford's house, and Mike Torchik was there, and Cletus and a couple other 15-year-old boys. And the Gifford's husband he didn't have a car, so he drove his tractor to Jewett to talk to his father-in-law, who had gone to the Burley Q bar. And he had left his 12-year-old son in the car. And do you remember the Burley Q? Somebody remember you remember the Burley Q, John? You went to the Burley Q? They ate a lot of sandwiches there. All right. What's that? Didn't drink no beer. Okay. Well, this Mr. Moffat drank beer. I can assure you that. So there are obviously still family members alive, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but he was not a nice man. And so the husband went down to talk to him, told him basically stay out of Skit. So that enraged this Moffat, and he got in the car and told his 12-year-old son, nobody's going to tell me what to do. So he drove to Skit. He got his shotgun out, and the Gifford husband said, get in your truck, just walk away. This was a shack, a literal shack. These people lived in. Some people say it was a coal shed that they turned into a house, but it was a tar paper shack. So Mike was in the house when this was all going on, and Maffett kept coming, and his son-in-law shot a couple of warning shots, and his son in the paper said, I don't know what happened. He told Daddy, don't come down. And Daddy said, I'll do whatever I want, wherever I want. And after that, I don't know what happened because I was hiding on the running board. So here's this poor 12-year-old kid with his father. Comes down, keeps walking down the sidewalk, shoots twice, warns him. Maffett takes his shotgun by the barrel and is going to use it like a baseball bat. And Gifford shoots him twice. And he still keeps coming. And Gifford said in his testimony, I had never been in a fight in my life. I ran. And he ran. And at that point, Maffett collapsed and he died. So Gifford was arrested. And he was held without bond. And the grand jury, the prosecutor brought manslaughter charges against him, and the grand jury refused to indict him. So he never was justifiable homicide, essentially. And so what Mike remembered most about that, he was 15 years old, and he was testifying at the grand jury, and the prosecutor said, well, what exactly did he say? And Mike says, I can't say that. And the judge says, son, you just tell him exactly what he says. And Mike says, I couldn't believe it. They let me cuss. They let him cuss. That was his biggest memory from the whole thing. They let me cuss. So, at any rate, Mr. Maffett is buried in Jewett. He's buried about 4 graves away from the rest of his family, and his name is misspelled on his tombstone. So, I have talked to some relatives, and they said he was a bad man. But at any rate, so yes, so the family did bury him. They did give him a stone, but they put him like I say, it's like 4 or 5 spaces away, and his last name is misspelled. So, before I conclude, I'm going to give first of all, I want to thank Sandy again for forcing me to do this. Even though she shows me no sympathy for pain and suffering. I have no idea where we're going to be next year. I don't know if we'll go back to Greenmont. We were originally going to do 2 cemeteries, but stay in one. So we were going to bring in some stuff from Cemetery Center Hidey. There's some good Civil War stories out there. We're not sure where we're going from here. You know, we could do 2 or 3 more just in Caddis alone. I could go back to Greenmont. I'm not sure what we're doing, but we'll probably do another one. This is the 18th annual. We're going to at least do an even 20. Then we'll go from there. But I'm going to put a plug. My friend John Baker, who was his writer for years for the Tuscarawas County paper. I forget the Times Reporter. I always get that and the Times Leader messed up. Times Reporter, and he did a history column there. He is leading the ghost tour at Zor, correct?
I'm a storyteller.
He's like me. He's a storyteller at the ghost tour at Zor on the 30th and 1st?
31st and 1st.
31st and 1st, what time? Do you remember? He's like me. He didn't know either. I didn't know either. So anyhow, they tell ghost stories up there. We tell history stories. But if you're interested in that sort of thing, he's going to do that. So I'm going to put in a little plug for him. Folks, I appreciate everybody coming. I think there's a lot of sweets left up there. Be careful walking out. Please don't trip. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you, folks.